Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Jack Wright in relation to the Gomez versus Wright analysis that is here on the channel. More about that in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. Now, as I said in Gomez's video, I want to offer a trigger warning to those of you who are watching today's video that we will be dealing with sensitive and triggering topics related to SA and similar actions. For the sake of being conscious of the experience of others and to make sure that YouTube doesn't remove this video, I will be referring to the circumstances in their abbreviated forms. For those of you who are unaware of what those abbreviations may be referring to, please check the description of this video or look on the internet to gain better understanding. Now, Jack Wright and his twin brother James were born on March 29th in 2003 in California. While Jack started his Instagram in 2016, the year 2019 would see him upload his first TikToks and join the influencer group referred to as the Hype House. Here he would start an online, unofficial, and undefined relationship with Sienna Mae Gomez, who we covered in our prior analysis, though their friendship had preceded their interaction on the show itself. For more information about that specific relationship, please refer to my first video on this case. Now, on January 20th of 2022, Wright released the video that we are going to be analyzing today. I will work to determine any authentic emotional displays, identify any areas of agitation or spikes from his nonverbal baseline, and scan for any desynchronization in order to see what his body's communication can tell us and whether or not it's different than the words he says. Once again, if you have not seen the first part to this, the one where I am analyzing Sienna Mae Gomez, go and check that as well before you come back and watch this. It will help add context to this video. Let's begin.
I've sat down many times trying to do this. It's been very hard. I want to start off by saying, I just want to say thank you guys so much for your support and for giving me time. I wanted to share what I went through with Sienna and my side of the story. This all started when my friend came out with a tweet because he was worried about me. He actually witnessed a bunch of times what Sienna did to me.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause and make some notes about just the generalities as I do in these videos. Obviously, we can see that the setting itself is fairly white. Now, the room itself seems to be decorated as such, so it might not be a red flag. And with that in mind, his clothing isn't also white as well, which would push us to believe that he might be trying to visually manipulate us. Not sure about that side of things. There's not enough to say. Non-verbally speaking for him, he maintains this forward-sitting posture with a number of various manipulators happening with his hands. We have some various steepling ones, some interlacing, some massaging and wringing of the hands. And all of these are indicators of agitation throughout the entirety of the video. You'll see them when they come up. And another thing that I do want to note that many people noticed and that I also noticed myself, which made some of this difficult, is the number of times that he did cut the video. There were very, very many cuts. Even in this beginning intro part here, we have so many cuts. So that is a question of whether or not it's authentic. More on that in just a second. He's about to respond to some of the stuff that we saw Sienna bring out in the earlier video. So let's see how that actually plays out.
After Mason's tweet, their family reached out to our family, told Mason to take down his tweet, and he did. We wanted to settle it offline. Our families and our lawyers got together. My statement was confirming the tweet. It was the truth.
Okay, so now in this part, as you can see, it's fast forwarding all of this area here, and all of this is important information to his story, but not as valuable for the nonverbal aspect in and of itself. And I do want to explain what I mean by that, because it's not that what he's saying or displaying here isn't valuable. The editing did make it extremely difficult. As this video continues on forward, you'll see that he chops it up between different times of day. It seems as though he changes his lighting. His overall demeanor, dress, and look stay the same, so we can assume that this is likely on the same day, but it is over a great amount of time, and it may even have portions that seem a little scrambled up. So with all of this, there are a lot of questions that kind of come into that. It does make it difficult for me to determine whether or not he's being genuine through it because of the cuts. I cannot see enough in context around it to be able to see what his face is or isn't doing, or his body is or isn't doing outside of those times. So that makes it fairly unusable just for this video. The information itself is important. If you do want to know what that is, go ahead and check the description of this video. He goes through and he breaks down all of the different points that Sienna brings up and his related tells back to that and his related story back to that. And throughout that, from what I could see, it seemed to be synchronized, but it was so horribly cut up that it was difficult to say. We'll get to the end here, and there's more that we can actually observe and watch through. And so we'll watch through it all, and then we will continue with the analysis.
I just want to start off by saying that I didn't stay silent in this situation over these last couple months. I talked to my friends, my family, my parents, counselors, and I was able to process everything.
I'm going to go ahead and pause it here as well, because this is something that I do want to make note of. Some people were accusing him of not doing anything and just staying quiet during this instance, which could have been seen as suspicious behavior is what they were trying to say. So during this video, he uses terminology and phrasing and wording that you can tell he has had help understanding what he's processing and going through. He mentions that he has sought professional help. So with that in mind, we can actually hear that vernacular come out in his recollection during his video. Now, obviously, like I said, it's not in here because those are the verbal parts of it and the nonverbal wasn't too useful in that area. But it was important for me to note that he does know various terminology that lets me know that he does have above an average amount of understanding of it. And so that would maybe push me to believe that he did some digging on the topic in general. So that's where I understand this to be. Those are the evidences that I saw for him to be telling the truth in this area, and I thought that was important to note. There wasn't anything to push me away from that, but I did want to let you know that for context since you didn't really get to see it.
I don't think I'll ever be the same person I was before Sienna. It sucks, and there's gonna be people that try to take advantage of you, and
you can hear the difficulty that he's having as he's speaking, and it's having a lot of action back in here as he's trying not to cry. He's having difficulty in that part, and he's doing some nervous movements with his hands, even while he's trying to do these coaxing gestures. As he's trying to think of the correct words and he's trying to do it, you can see his hands are moving and shaking. This is a sign of agitation. It could be nervousness because of the video. It could be nervousness because of the subject matter. The likelihood is that it's a combination of multiple different things. Regardless, he is agitated here, but it is not in a way that shows desynchronization. It is in a way that seems to amplify what he's saying. Let's continue.
Get you at your most vulnerable state, and that's not fair. That's not fair at all. And
so we see there are still cuts in here, and I'm trying to navigate around these as much as possible. This is the area that has the least amount of cuts, so I found this the most useful non-verbally. But you could see the grief and the pain and the sadness wash across his face in a rather uncontrollable style, with the inflammation coming into his nose and around his mouth and eyes well before anything else really starts to surface, aside from the small vocal tells that we heard earlier. So we're seeing this rather seep in and force its way out, and it doesn't feel like he's trying to drag it out of himself, more so rather that he's trying to keep it within himself. And the reason that we get that feeling that he's trying to hold it in rather than forcing it out is because of its synchronization. It's not forced, it's not desynchronized, and you could see that it's flowing naturally across his face and his body. So that's how we're seeing that physically. Let's continue.
A lot of the time it's usually like the nice people that like let people walk all over them, and that was me. Like I let everyone just walk all over me no matter what. Like I would do anything for anyone.
genuine sadness, emotion, and tears here. You can see that his upper lip is freezing and stiffening. This is a rather involuntary reaction to things unless you are made aware of it. So now all of you watching this can now be aware of that. As you become more emotional, pay attention to your upper lip. It will weird you out a little bit. But then along with that, you can see that the tears have reached his eyes as well and full inflammation. They have not yet spilled over and he has not yet reached for his face, but these are things that will be keeping our eye out. Does he allow the tears to fall down during this display here? It could be a sign of manipulation. Now, many of you have brought up, and I feel rightfully so, that you can cry and the tears can fall, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're fake. That is quite true. And within certain contexts, that even would make more sense. For instance, if you're crying alone, it doesn't make sense to wipe off the tears consistently, or if you're in an area that you don't feel like you're going to be perceived or people will care, it might not be as important. In this sort of area, since it's very, very obvious that a lot of attention is put on him, then that means that he's very aware of what he's presenting, which makes almost everything like that more intentional. So he can understand that he's presenting the tears, and rather than wanting them to be out so you could see them, wipe them away, and that choice can be made there because of the situation. Just wanted to clarify that a little bit because I feel like that's a good argument from you guys, and I wanted to make that known here. So let's continue.
And I think that's one of the things she gave me was I learned how to be more bold and finally say no and know that it was right to speak out. I feel like people don't know what you go through until you're in it, and it's definitely like humiliating, weird, awkward. I want to be that person.
So this is another thing that I want to put forward here that really lends us to believe his authenticity rather than perhaps him trying to push a narrative here, is that he is also admitting his silliness, that he felt silly or that he felt inept or he felt in a way lacking, which, as we've seen in the past, oftentimes people who are guilty will try vehemently hard to come across as perfectly pure in the situation, which is oftentimes more gray than black and white than we would like to assume. So he is taking a gray stance in this by admitting that he felt as if he were doing things wrong or that things were wrong on his side. That is important to make note of in his psychology because it lets us know that he's not on the aggressive here. It's just important to note. Let's continue.
That says it's okay. It's okay to speak out. You're not going to be known for that. It's just a little obstacle that you have to get through. It's something you have to get through, and it sucks, but I feel like in my situation, like I've just learned. You learn from it. I've learned so much.
Okay, this is interesting. You could see that he's having a lot of emotional difficulty, and this is playing out by his body becoming more and more active. You could see that his feet are moving now. He has been doing this specific gesture here. Now, the steepling gesture has a number of theories behind of what it can mean. Some people see it as perhaps a powerful gesture. I would say that if you see somebody sitting with their fingers like this, steepled like this is usually a power play. But if you pay attention to how Jack is doing his are down, and he is pressing them in repetition methodically towards each other. Now, the repetition in that actually pushes me to believe that that is a self-soothing gesture for him. It's the existence of that repetition that allows your nerves to calm down, ergo the self-soothing gestures. Regardless, all the way across, we see that there is synchronization across this, and that is flowing well with what the words that he is giving us are actually saying as well. So that is important to note. Let's continue.
From everything, I've grown so much as a person. It's insane. And as of Sienna, I don't know if she'll ever be sorry. I don't know if she'll ever learn from what she did or she'll ever admit to what she did. But I just don't want her to do this to other people. If you've been through a similar situation as me, I encourage you just to speak out to anyone. And trust me, it helps so much. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to me and letting me take time and breathe and process everything. And I'm glad I'm finally ready to tell the world my story. If you're watching right now and you've been through a situation like mine, I just want to say your feelings are valid. Your feelings are valid, your opinion is valid. I believe you, and I want you to know that you can talk to someone, you can talk to anyone, you can talk to me. But that's how I want to end it off. I love you guys.
Okay, so it ended oddly on his channel as well, so let's go ahead and wrap that up here. So some things that I want to know about that ending portion there where he's addressing people. In there were obviously a lot of cuts. So on the note of the cuts, because I feel like I should address it, is that with this video, with the severity of it, the heft of it, and everything considered that goes into this situation, I do understand why he would have it cut up so severely, especially if it's not fully scripted, which I do not believe it was. I did not see any nonverbal tells to see if he was looking off to sides. I did not see if he was reading anything as well. That didn't seem as if he was scripting this video. So with that in mind, if he's trying to address something as important as this, but he doesn't want to say the wrong thing or say it in the wrong way, he may or may not cut it up to fit whatever he wants to communicate rather than what he said when he sat down rather unpreparedly to speak. So that's what I'm assuming happened here. And the reason that I'm assuming that is it boils down to his nonverbal communication and some of the authenticity tells that we saw there, not the least of which was his own admittance of feeling like he was doing incorrectly and that it was on him rather than on anyone else. That is an important thing to make note of. Along with that, the emotional displays that we did see from him throughout it, and this also includes throughout the rest of the video that we weren't able to really go through as well because of the editing. There are areas that I saw that were very, very synchronized with this last emotional display at the very end, where we saw the onset, you could see the inflammation come in, the face of the emotion comes in, and then it falls off at the very, very end as well, or he cuts it and it makes it to where it's difficult to see the ending. So with just usually being able to see the front face, the onset of an emotion, but to see the authentic tells and synchronization around that, that does push me to believe in this instance that Jack Wright would be saying more authentic and truthful words than Sienna Mae Gomez, according to his nonverbal communication. Now, I know that I most certainly did not catch everything. In fact, there are probably many things that I could go back through and continue to pick it apart and pick it apart and pick it apart, but I hope to be able to have captured the general feel of what his video was saying and what I was able to gather from that. If you do have any other questions or suggestions for videos, please leave them in the comments below. I do check those regularly. We have some very fun series coming out here soon that has been heavily requested that also involves Megan here on the channel, so that should be a pretty good time. Keep your ears out and your eyes out for that. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for today. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.